We begin with breaking news. Iran has announced that its military unintentionally shot down a Ukrainian passenger jet, killing all 176 people on board. Tehran says it was a case of human error. Western countries, based on evidence including this mobile phone footage, had been saying they thought an Iranian missile brought down the plane. After initial denials, Iran's military now says the people responsible will be court-martialed. Well, meanwhile, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif tweeted, "A sad day. Preliminary conclusions of internal investigation by armed forces. Human error at a time of crisis caused by U.S. adventurism led to disaster. Our profound regrets, apologies, and condolences to our people, to the families of all the victims, and to other affected nations." All right, for the latest from Tehran, we're joined now by journalist Reza Kasteh. Reza, good morning to you. What more can you tell us about the statement that was issued by Iran's military?
Well, this morning, the General Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces released this statement, finally admitting to shooting down the Ukrainian passenger plane. It offered apology and sympathy to all the families of the victims and the Iranian nation, as well as the other countries involved in the tragic incident. It said that the passenger plane was flying near a sensitive IRGC military site, and it was a very critical and sensitive time following the IRGC's missile attacks on the U.S. base in Iraq. There were news of American military aircraft flying over the region, and it was on high alert, so a human error caused the air defense to mistake the passenger plane with the U.S. aircraft, and the tragedy happened.
Well, in the first few days following the crash, Iranian officials ruled out a military strike as being behind it. Reza, why do you think they chose to admit to this now?
The pressure of the public opinion and the foreign countries, all the social media would have left no other choice for the country to admit. It must have admitted if that had happened. In the statement, the armed forces said that immediately after the incident, it formed a board, a committee to probe into the incident. But it did not include the government in the board, in the investigation committee. So somehow it exonerated the government, and I've heard from my colleagues and sources that the government was not aware of the shoot down until yesterday, Friday. But no matter how whether the government was informed or not, it is an embarrassing incident for the country, and there are anger among the nation.
All right. Reza Kasteh, a journalist from Tehran, we thank you so very much for that update. Well, for The View from the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, we're joined now by DW correspondent David Stern. Hello to you, David. So has there been an official response from the government in Kiev on this announcement by Iran that its military shot down the passenger plane?
Well, yes. In fact, within the last hour, we've seen, or a little bit more, an official statement in Ukrainian and in English from President Volodymyr Zelensky. I'll just read it very quickly in English. It was a tweet that he's issued. This morning brings the truth, he says. Ukraine insists on a full admission of guilt. We expect Iran to bring those responsible to justice, return the bodies, pay compensation, and issue an official apology. The investigation must be full, open, and continue without delays or obstacles. So the Ukrainians very quick to greet the news, but obviously for them, the story is not over. They're expecting even more, and they're expecting all the details to come out, as well as for those to responsible to be held, brought to justice.
All right, so some very clear demands on the part of Ukraine. But David, what can they do if these demands are not met by Iran?
Well, the president didn't say anything about that, but we heard from the foreign minister, Vadim Pristaiko. Yesterday, he held a press conference, and he had said, before this news came out, by the way, that if it did come to this, if it did turn out that a missile had shot it down, then there are legal steps that they would take, ultimately possibly going to the United Nations. And he drew the comparison with the shooting down of the Malaysian Airlines MH17 back in 2014. So the Ukrainians have already started thinking along those lines. Now, I guess it depends on how quickly the Iranians move forward in the investigation and in these other demands that the Ukrainians have made.
Well, David, you mentioned that other incident with a plane crash over eastern Ukraine. This is not the first time that the country finds itself caught up in a tragedy linked to an international conflict. How are people taking it?
Well, yes, exactly. This is not the first time that Ukraine has found itself in this position. Also, and just in general, in a very sticky international situation. Remind you also about the impeachment proceedings in the United States, which has caused a great deal of, I guess, diplomatic jockeying. But the comparison with MH17 is very acute. There, Dutch investigators have determined that Russia brought a missile system into eastern Ukraine, which shot down the Malaysian airline. Those people have not been brought to justice, nor has Russia admitted to this. So the Ukrainians are very much watching the Iranians. This is the reaction from the general public. Well, it's very early on a Saturday morning, but I imagine that they will greet it. But as I think as with the president, they'll be waiting to see what the Iranians do next.
All right, David Stern, correspondent in Kiev, we thank you very much.
Thank you.